Have you felt nervous before a race? Do you get those pre-race jitters? Or does anxiety really overtake your whole body during a race where you can't be able to perform the way you want to as a runner? That is exactly what we're talking about today. Welcome to episode 127 on the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. So I have two very special guests with me today. Two of my dear friends. We have Coach Kat, who is a repeat podcast guest, and then we have the amazing Irene Bosco, who is a licensed clinical social worker. And she is going to really be our content expert today in talking about how we as runners can get over some race anxiety. So I am really, really excited to have both of you on. I know Coach Kat is going to share some personal experience that she has had during some races in struggling with really getting over some of those jitters and having some anxious feelings. But Irene, if you don't mind sharing just kind of a little dynamic warm up about yourself, where do you reside, and let some of our running community know about a little bit about your running background as well as your professional background.
Sure. I live in Berlin, Connecticut, under some very lovely storms that are passing through right about now. It's been loud. I started running about 22 years ago and have been pretty much running ever since. And I started running initially for my mental health. I had no aspirations of ever doing really anything with it other than really reducing some anxiety and working through some depression at the time. I now practice helping people with anxiety and depression. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm primarily telehealth. I do have an office in Hamden, actually right around the corner from your place, Duane.
Yes.
And I'm not there that much. This seems to be the way of things now, but that's just a little bit about me.
Mm-hmm. And what do you have planned for your next race?
Oh, geez. So my next race, excuse me, is Marine Corps Marathon. And it is, excuse me, it's a do-over of my last Marine Corps Marathon, which was right before the pandemic. And I had the brilliant idea of running 3 marathons over the course of 3 consecutive weekends, and then hurt myself in the last one, which was probably to be foreseen. And Duane actually helped me. He rehabbed my my quad and got me back to running really, really quick, and it was great. And so I had to defer it for 2 years. First year, and we'll probably get into this, I don't really do virtual races at all. I like the support and I like the noise. But I'm redoing that one in October. And then my sister asked me if I wanted to do another one in December. And I was like, we're setting up for a recipe for disaster here. But I'm going to do I think it's the Palm Beach Marathon. I forget the exact name of it, in December.
Okay. All right. So we got 2 marathons on the calendar in fall and early winter. We'll call that. We won't call it late fall. We'll say that we're in different seasons. And yes, that is how we met years ago. And that is very exciting for you. And yeah, kudos to you. And thanks for sharing your story on how you got into running, because I feel like a lot of the runners that I get on calls with and I get to talk to, a lot of runners, get into running. I find the common scenario is kind of weight loss or just wanting to challenge themselves and do something new. And then once they get into running, they all tell me now, I ask them, say, and they want to, work with us in our coaching program. I say, well, why do you want to run this half marathon? Why is it important to you to run New York in the fall? And they all tell me, it is more of, I love running. I love the mental benefit it gives me. And like, I myself, like, totally feel that way, right? Like
Yeah.
I got into it for more the physical side of things and just to like, stay lean and the physical benefits, then like the challenge of can I be a runner? As I was in my 30s, and now, it is those mental benefits. So that is interesting how you kind of started with running because you knew, and obviously with your background, right, you knew of the mental benefits that running can offer. So that's why I'm really excited to kind of get into today's talk, because I know there are probably going to be a lot of runners who are listening to this who have struggled, whether it is, at a race and having some performance anxiety where, the pressure kind of mounts on them. And this is really where I want to kind of turn it to, Coach Kat. You've been very generous in, being willing to share some of your story of, how you have, dealt, or how you've been confronted with some, anxious feelings at races. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And by the way, if this is the first episode you guys are ever listening to, Coach Kat's been on many, many times. So you can check her long bio out, one of the other episodes. I will definitely link those in the show notes of previous episodes with Coach Kat. But yeah, Kat, if you can just share with us some of like when this started, like what did you feel? Like what were you going through?
When I first started running races, I went out there, no issues, did excellent, no nerves whatsoever. As time started going on, and we'll get into that later, I started finding I would train fine, 16-week marathon plans, train perfect, fueling, everything down pat, was physically fine. But then the week before, something would come over me and I would get bouts of panic, like where I couldn't sleep. I did not fuel properly days before the races. And this could have been this was usually half marathon and marathons. It wasn't usually under that, where all of my training didn't help. I was nervous. I was not sleeping well. Then the morning of races, and one specific marathon in Maine comes to mind, couldn't eat. My stomach just said no. There was no getting food down. It wasn't a nausea. It wouldn't go down my throat. So I started this under fuel, definitely. Halfway through the race, the nerves hit me even stronger. Couldn't drink, had barely sips of water. And after that race, I seriously considered whether I should race again, because I had had many previous experiences with races where I put in 4 months of training. And then race day, everything, you couldn't tell I trained. It was like I had not spent any time training. I was that struggling. And it wasn't necessarily one thing or another, it was everything. So I knew race anxiety was normal, but I knew that at this point it was affecting my performance. And when it was causing me to not want to race at all or even run, then I decided, that's the time where the anxiety moved into a level where I needed somebody to help me and find ways to not be so anxious, to cope with this. Because I'm not a shy person. Everybody knows I am not a shy person. I'll get in front of classes, I'll talk forever, I'll lead groups. So I'm not a normally nervous individual when it comes to that, but this, totally different. So I talked to Irene. I had a couple of telehealth sessions with her over the summer prior to actually REMACON last year and MCM, Marine Corps Marathon. And she'll go on and tell you what worked, but it really, really made a difference to talk to somebody about these specific ways to overcome this. And I do want to say, and I've always wanted to say, and I'm sure Irene will back me up, nerves are normal and they're okay. But when they moved into my level of nervousness where it was affecting me really, really negatively, that's when I decided and knew I needed to get an outside help because I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, thank you first off for sharing your story and being willing to share. Because I think it is always tough. But I think, within our Healthy Runner coaching team, we're pretty transparent and we share our wins as well as our losses. And because we all struggle with the same things. So thank you for sharing that. And just to kind of make sure that I understand is like the initial races that you did at the beginning of your running journey, you were fine. And then it was really after, this wasn't even your first marathon, right? This was like your third or fourth. Was that correct?
Sixth.
Sixth. Okay.
Sixth.
Yeah. Did you
I had
have
struggled.
new?
I started struggling on Marathon 5. And I think it was partly, and this wasn't what Irene, but I think when I first started, there was no expectations. I just ran it. I flew. I knew how to run. I was fine. And then as time goes on, outside expectations from people, even myself, started affecting me, getting in my head. So.
Okay. Yeah. And I can definitely, I can see that happening and being common. Obviously the first marathon someone runs, with myself only running one, I can say is
That's
you're
okay.
nervous because you're like, can I finish it? Right.
Yeah.
Like, but it's still, I can see after you do a couple where it's like, hey, now I have to like do better than the last. And, especially if, you've been talking it up and you've been sharing it with your friends, sharing it with your running community, then it's like, hey, I got to like deliver here. There's some like pressure on me where I have to deliver. So I could see that, being fairly common. Is that something that is common that you've seen, Irene?
Yes, definitely. We start to put, not only the expectations on ourselves, but we also kind of put on the expectations of others, even if they're not actually there. We just have this dump on ourselves of what we need to do, and that it always has to be better. And we know, we can rationalize that progress isn't necessarily linear at all times, but we have a hard time believing that when it's, hey, I'm a running coach, I have a following, I have, I've done some before, I should know this. Well, that's also part of the problem, because you do know it, and you do know what to expect at mile 21, when, it just all goes, crashing down and you want to, crawl in a hole and die. So yes.
Yes. Great description.
Or run by the fireball shot stand at Marine Corps, which I have not ever done.
Wait, so there's seriously a fireball shot stand?
Yes, there's a group that they hand out. There is a tent set up with shots of fireball, and they'll, you're running by or like crawling by at that point, and all you smell is alcohol, and you're like, I can't even right now.
The logic in my mind is it numbs the pain. You just numbs everything and you just keep going, right?
I will test that out next one.
All right.
I just don't understand though. If you're already dehydrated, how's alcohol going to help you?
It's not.
You won't know you're dehydrated. You won't care. All right, sorry guys.
Wow. Okay, guys, we digress. We knew this is gonna probably be an episode where we're just gonna go off on different tangents. So hang in there. We will get to the purpose of this podcast is to really share some tips for you, right? In how you can overcome if you're experiencing something like Coach Kat was experiencing, or you might be experiencing something a little bit different. And Irene's going to kind of share with us how we can kind of help overcome some of these obstacles. So I guess, let's get into this, Irene. What would be, I asked you, like a framework, could you share this in like 5 tips? And because you're just like amazing, you're like, absolutely, I can. So, if we kind of break this down into 5 tips, what would be the first recommendation or tip that you would have to overcome race anxiety?
Have a plan. Have something concrete that you can refer to. The plan could be around, like with Kat, it could be around fueling. And what do we tweak around that? It could be around, your A goal, B goal, C goal, and just planning to execute, which is basically the second one. Spoiler alert. So having that plan, and having something concrete that you can refer to that you've practiced over and over and over again, where you kind of take the thinking out of it and you just refer yourself back there. And
sorry to interject there, but
No,
do
go
you
ahead.
mean like a plan for your race itself, like the logistical kind of side of things of like time, what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, like that kind of a plan?
That kind of a plan, and also your plan for getting there. Every little thing that has to do with the race itself, have it planned out before. So the training is kind of takes care of itself. You know, you have your training plan, you go, you do the runs, you do that. But having, you know, down to the littlest thing, where am I going to eat, you know, the night before? What am I going to eat the night before? Am I going to eat the night before? And just having these things all mapped out so that you're taking away that thinking in the moment. You know, because you don't want to get down to Marine Corps, or you don't want to get up to Maine and be like, oh man, I didn't realize I need reservations for this place, or, you know, those things. And it's also planning, if it is a destination race, what's your plan for the day before? We tend to, when we go to Washington, we get down there on a Friday. So what are we doing on Saturday? And what is my plan? What is going to help me feel less anxious about this race? And how can I work it in? So I don't want to be on my feet all day walking around the monuments, but I do want to be able to have a little bit of movement and just like really have it all mapped out.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Coach Whitney and I actually talked about this in a previous episode in which we kind of gave tips for like race day planning, blueprint, and then we have like a great resource PDF, basically like checklist style of like, so you remember everything, and then you could even write down like the morning of, you know, I'm going to wake up at this time, fill in the blank. I'm going to, you know, eat this at this time. I'm going to leave my house at this time. I'm going to start my warm up. So for those who haven't gotten your kind of Spark Healthy Runner race day blueprint yet, and you're watching the video version of this, just type in blueprint into the comment box and I will shoot it over to you. And those listening on the podcast, I'll definitely link that episode as well, in which we get into some more of those details. So definitely having this plan, this race day plan, is going to help us be able to calm some of those nerves down. And for me, myself, being a planner, that makes total sense to me, because when I do have a plan, I know I feel better about whatever I'm going to be doing. Okay, so that makes sense in terms of that tip. Coach Kat, do you have anything to add to that? Is that something that you implemented, or you're kind of a planner too? So I would imagine you've always used a plan.
Well, I did, but what Irene pointed out, something very simple, was my fueling. My issue was I can't, even now before races, it doesn't matter how many times I practice morning runs and fuel. Before a race, my stomach doesn't really cooperate no matter what. So we talked about, and I experimented many times, eating, and this is not what I recommend for everybody. This is where you have to trial and error. But I eat a very specific meal at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Heavy carbs, brown rice, dried cranberries, very specific meal. And I buy the cups, the Minute Maid rice cups, so I can bring it to any hotel, nuke it, dried cranberries. But I eat it really late at night, so then it pretty much sustains me. And in the morning, if I can eat a UCAN bar, I try to eat a UCAN bar on the way. And that's enough, as long as I've been fueling properly the week before. I know some people don't want to eat after like dinner time. For me, and we discussed this and we practice this, this is what works for me. So it does become the plan that works for you. But I do eat pretty late at night. And actually ultra runners who have long races, they tend to start eating at 11 night, 1 in the morning, like they continuously eat, because it's hard to get the fuel in right before a race that you need. So I try to do that. So, but that was part of the planning. And that was part of I plan this, I've been practicing this down. Let me grab my Minute Maid, Minute rice. We're not sponsored by them, but that's what I use, brown rice. And
hey, maybe we should be.
Yeah, why not?
Maybe I'll reach out to them.
I'll 100% support them. They've been with me on every race. That and my Wonder Woman toaster, long story. But you have to bring your own toaster. Hint for anybody, if you use waffles or anything like that, English muffins, bring your own toaster. Never trust the hotel's toaster. Bring your own. I know it sounds silly, but anyway, side note. So we practiced that.
All right. So
We
don't
did, and we
forget your
didn't-
running shoes and don't forget your toaster when
Your
you go for your
toaster.
I'm
destination
telling you.
race.
that brought Kat's anxiety down, right? Because if she doesn't
It
have to
did.
think about where am I going to make my toast,
Exactly.
and we didn't try to reinvent the wheel. Like we didn't try to fit Kat into a peg of you have to eat at 4 a.m. before a race. It was what works for you, and then we looped that in, and like she said, then we practice, which is again, spoiler alert, the second tip.
Yeah.
is
So
practicing and doing
that's a
it.
great segue. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that second tip there?
It's practicing your plan and executing your plan. So the execution, a lot of times race specific, comes with actually, getting to the race, those logistical pieces. But if we're talking like with Kat, if we're talking fueling, then we incorporated that into her long runs. And it's like, okay, we're going to try this week, and we're going to see how it helped. We're going to measure it because, we like to measure things. So did it help? Did it not? And then if we needed to, we tweak. So it took a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, Kat, but maybe the second time when we were working on fueling where we kind of looped in, it's like, all right, if you're eating late at night and that works for you, just do it.
Yeah.
And then we'll see, the next day, see how your energy level is, without trying to, add GI upset to the mix. Because when you're anxious, kind of like when you're running, your stomach isn't really interested in digesting at that moment. So same with anxiety. A lot of times your stomach just isn't interested in digesting. It's got other things to worry about. So roll with it, do what works. Do what works. Don't try to say, I've read, that, I need to eat oatmeal at 5 a.m. before a race, and it has to be exactly 2 hours before, therefore I'm going to get the benefits. And then I have a gel before, the start, and, every 3 miles thereafter.
Yeah.
That's why you practice, because you see, do I really have to do that? Or is my body different and my fueling can look different?
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because you
And
hear so much about oatmeal before your run, eat 2 to 3 hours before your race. But for me, that doesn't work. I tried all of those tricks, and for me, that just personally doesn't work. It may work for 99% of the runners, but that 1% that it doesn't work, we had to think outside of the box. So they're really, if that is you, and I'm sure Irene will say, you're not totally alone. I'm
Right.
the outside there. I'm the outsider in this group. I don't follow any of those rules.
But too, what does follow the rules though is you focus on what works and you ditch what doesn't. And you don't get too caught up in what isn't working. You're looking for, how do I need to think outside the box? And you basically run with it and see what works. You do have that, you have to experiment, which is again why we did it with the long runs. We have to see if it's working. And then if it's working, we're gonna stick with it. Whatever
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So making sure that you are practicing, and if it is race specific, perhaps maybe doing some practice races prior to the big event. Even if it's not a marathon, let's say you're training for the marathon distance, practice with other races, right? But still go through the same, routine, as well as those long runs. And we're big proponents of that with all of our clients is, we tell them like, hey, these long runs are your practice for your race, in terms of what you eat the day before, the night before, how you hydrate, what you're going to have before your run, during your run, how much you're going to hydrate, right? And so just kind of making sure that if someone finds a solution that works for them, they have a plan, that they're going to practice it, right? And that is going to help alleviate some of that anxiety that we'll feel on race, morning. All right.
Right.
Excellent. Then, yeah. So what's tip number 3?
This is all looping together very nice. It's being flexible. It's being flexible, with the plan, and being flexible, not necessarily with the practice itself, because we want you to practice it, but with what the practice looks like. So if we kept pounding away for Kat, like, no, you got to make sure you fuel before, I think we would have had different results with her anxiety level, because we're just going to be building her anxiety around that and adding more anxiety to, what's already going on. So if we could take one thing out, then we're going to do that. So it's being flexible around it. And when you're measuring or when you're assessing, is this plan working or not? Don't be married to it if it's not working. Be flexible with it. Where else can I think, all right, what do I need to do anything different? And if I feel like I need to do something different, I'm not going to stay, rooted into this plan because it is my plan. So a couple of years ago when I was training, it all kind of goes with fueling, at least for me right now, just because that tended to be where stuff would go wrong, especially with flexibility. I always ran with a certain kind of gel, and all of it, making sure you're having water with it. And then, I know my miles. I know that if I hit 3 miles, then I know I'm going to need something, just because that's how I burn out. That's when I know I'm burning through. So I used this particular gel, and it worked great. And it worked great for years until it didn't. And I'm just going, okay, we're just going to stick with it because it's always worked and it's got to work again. And, my anxiety is rising around it. My frustration is rising around it. I'm literally running off the trail trying to deal with what it's doing to my stomach. And it wasn't working. So, I worked with my coach at the time of, what can we try? And I threw out an idea. He's like, well, you could try that, but I don't think it's going to work. And it didn't, but I tried it. And then we actually, through trial and error and being flexible, found what did. And those, those honey stinger waffles, those are the thing I never thought would set well with me. Those worked great. And I was able to, do what I had to do, but I still miss my gel. It was delicious. It was the best gel ever. I can't use it. It just really, it kills me now.
Yeah. So being flexible and trying to find, and, not perseverating on it needs to be this way, and not giving up on your goal too. Like, that's what I heard when you started talking about being flexible is, let's be creative and let's find a way that, no, it doesn't mean like you're never going to be able to run a marathon, or you're never going to be able to run a half marathon because of this. And the oatmeal doesn't work for you, or the banana that everyone has before a race doesn't work for you. So I kind of heard that in what you were talking about as well. Kat, do you have any kind of experience with this kind of flexibility piece besides, like, I don't know what you would do if there was no electricity at the place you were staying at before a race, because you wouldn't be able to plug your toaster in, but
don't worry, I got that covered. But in the worst case, well, never mind. You're talking about me. I have backup plans for backup plans. And by the way, bananas are not a good idea for me either. I'm allergic to them. So just puts me another weird runner conundrum, because they always have bananas and I can't go near bananas. But no, the flexibility, and fueling wasn't the only source of anxiety, and we'll get into the other sources, I'm sure, but it was a huge part. And I had always thought that, you were supposed to eat, but I couldn't. And why? And I would break down, like at mile 5 or 6 of a marathon, you have a lot more to go. And if you're already struggling, it plays mind tricks with you. And that's when I started questioning. And I remember where I was. I remember everything very clearly. Started questioning whether I should run, whether running is just not me. And it was, should I be running? Is running for me? Is the people who told me running was not what I should be doing, are they right? And these are serious things that came into my brain during this race. And a lot of it was because I was underfueled and dehydrated going into a race. So the fueling was one key aspect to, I don't want to say it was an easy aspect to fix, but it was an easy one to identify, and an easy one to do actionable, as we always talk about, actionable steps to remedy it. So,
okay.
And it brings up too, though, that what that particular, that more concrete thing brought to the anxiety, and that was, excuse me, the thoughts around it. And the thoughts are driving that anxiety train, and the thoughts around, should I be a runner? Is this for me? Can I do this? Those tend to feed on themselves. And those thoughts are absolute truth in our brains at that point, in our thoughts. It's just telling us this, and it's telling us this, and we got to believe it because, we're thinking it. So it's got to be true. And then it's finding ways to combat that. And the trick to that, free therapy advice, is if those thoughts are ringing so true that it's absolute truth, like a 10 out of 10, that is gospel. If you're going to challenge that with anything like a new thought or something different mind work wise, it's got to be really believable. So if you're thinking of something new and it's like, oh, if I'm going to rate that, it's going to be like a 3 out of 10 and I'm going to try it. Pure and simple, don't waste your time. You want something that's really highly rated, like 8, 9, and 10, so that you can start to really chip away at those thoughts that are ringing so true that they literally find other ways around to kind of reframe themselves in your thoughts and be like, oh yeah, but this and the way. So it's they're tricky. Thoughts are tricky and they're slippery. They are slippery.
Yeah. So it does have to be something that's powerful enough to override the negative thoughts that you have in your head, such as like, hey, I'm not meant to be a runner. I can't run this distance.
I do want to say though, I have run after that. I have run successful races after that. And even though I don't talk about a lot of my races, I'm very proud of RemaCon that I ran with Coach Lou and Mike. And that was the first one after talking to Irene, and I did really well, and I'm very proud of the stuff. So it's not all, don't think I stopped running, people, just because I don't post necessarily about my races. I still run races. I just don't post, but that one, I did run successful long distance races after that bad marathon. Just so let's clarify that ahead of time. I should have said that.
Yeah.
I didn't stop running.
But I think that's a success story, right? That you have overcome some of these. And I'm sure it's not something that's totally quote unquote cured, right?
Oh.
But
No.
you have found ways to kind of, overcome those. And hopefully this episode will be helpful for others who are struggling with similar issues. So, all right, we got 3 tips in. So what's the 4th tip, Irene?
Have supports. Again, thank you for leading this in, Kat, because it's like, oh, I don't post. You don't always need to, excuse me, get your support in that way. So Kat found ways to get support in other ways, but having support around it, and don't keep that bottled in. Let people know that this is a struggle and that this is what you're working on, so that they can help you and build you up around it. Supports are key.
Yeah. So just having like a supportive community and other people to turn to, lean on, like, hey, have a support network, whether it is family, friends, running community, that you can share some of what you're going through with.
Right. And 2, even if you need to bring it to, a formal level, like what Kat did, bringing it to that formal level, and let's really, target this before RemaCon. That's more of a formal support, but the informal supports are really, where it's at. Those are the people that you can text and be like, hey, look, this is really getting to me today. And they can actually be there for you right in that moment.
Yep. Kat, do you want to add anything?
Oh, I have so much on this.
I know you do.
Well,
I would imagine so.
I have Irene's number on speed dial, but the support, and I was very honest with the coaching with Duane, Coach Duane, Latoya, Whitney, and Lou. I asked them not to post or say anything about my races. And that is a form of support, because for me, I don't really necessarily want people to know what races I'm doing. It doesn't make me, a lot of people love social media and love posting, and it makes them feel great, and it's their cathartic way. For me, it's the exact opposite. I will post all day long about running tips, everything. And I'll even post what I'm feeling. But the races I asked the coaches not to mention to anybody, and that was a huge support, knowing they had my back, knowing they were not, and Irene and I discussed this, knowing that nobody, and even my friend Jean, who I ran the Marine Corps Marathon virtually, we talked about, don't really broadcast me. I'll talk about it after the race. But that support was with the coaches, just telling me good luck, but not publicly, like just direct messaging me. And I had the support. Okay, now this is what I've been waiting for. These are maroon, you can't see, maroon watch bands for my Garmin. They are the same color as Scarlet Witch from Avengers, which brings me into how we really helped me immensely was Wanda. I know. What Irene realized is that when I was coaching and as I was running with my coaching people, even in a race, I was perfectly fine, no matter what the distance. I was like, okay, we can do this. It doesn't matter. So Irene told me to turn into a coach for myself. But that sounds silly. So I created somebody I was coaching called Wanda, who was with me the whole race. And Irene wanted me to talk to her out loud. Like she said, okay, tell her at mile 2, we're stopping to get drinks. Tell her at mile 4, we're stopping to walk. So I would be running and training by myself, and Wanda would make an appearance. And I would be talking to Wanda. Luckily, if you wear headphones, they think you're on the phone. But so is Wanda imaginary? I don't know. There was an incident in Remicon where we're still trying to figure out if she actually, I was delirious, if she actually showed up or not for real. A person on a bike, long story, but Wanda, and I named her Wanda because I can visualize, she's my favorite Avenger, Scarlet Witch, favorite Avenger character, other than Sorcerer Supreme, but we'll get into that later. I'm not getting on tangent with Avengers, but she is my favorite character, and that helps me, like, because then I would be able to talk to her and I can visualize her next to me, and I could turn into a coach, which is what I am 100% comfortable on. I will run with somebody day in and day out and coach them, and I'm very comfortable doing that, and that's where I feel like, okay, I know what we're going to do. I know we're going to do this at this. I know what we're going to do this. So having an imaginary person I was running with as a coach actually worked. And this is out of the box. And let me tell you, if you guys didn't think I was crazy to begin with, this is really, people are probably like, what on earth is she doing? But it's backed by Irene, who is an actual therapist. I mean, it's not like I created it. She decided it. She came up with this idea. I just was all for it. It made sense to me, but it isn't something that I would have thought on my own. And that's why having Irene, she told me, well, if you're comfortable coaching, why don't you just have somebody you're coaching if they're there or not? And that really does become a reality. So this person is with me, and sometimes I'll be swearing at her, sometimes I'll be like, it's hard to explain, and that probably wouldn't work for everybody because I'm unique with the coaching, but it works for me. And again, these are ways of, you may not always think, and I would have never known about these ways of doing it unless I actually said, okay, I have to talk to a professional. And Irene was able to pick up a lot of these things and think outside the box for me that I was able to incorporate, but I would never have thought of that on my own. And that's why sometimes asking for help from a professional, I mean, I'm a run coach, I have the background, but this was very hard to identify in my brain. If I saw it in somebody else, I know what to do. But when it was with me, it's like clouded a little bit. And that's where Irene, as an objective third person, I mean, I see this in a lot of my runners who are nervous before their first races. I know exactly what to tell them to help them feel better because I've been there. I really have been there. So anyone who's nervous out there before your first race, whether I'm your coach or not, whether you're coaching or not, contact me. I've been there, honestly. And it is a little nerve wracking to get on here and talk about this, but I trust Irene because she's the professional and she helped me through this. So you think outside of the box.
Yeah, so this is all still fitting into kind of having those supports. And in Kat's case, it was, from what I'm understanding, you tell me if I'm wrong, Irene, is, really kind of getting Kat in her comfort zone. And for her, her comfort zone is coaching others, because she does an amazing job as a coach, and motivating others, and getting others to really like get through the difficult moments for them. And she does an amazing job with that. So you're putting her in her comfort zone, where now she's almost having this out of body experience, right? It's not Kat running this race anymore. It's someone she's coaching, and hey, now I'm in my comfort zone. So now that kind of decreases the anxiety a little bit. Is that kind of the goal there?
Right. It's, it's matching to Kat as a person, and it is decreasing the anxiety. One, because she's focused on coaching at that point. So she's really kind of pulled it into that logical part of her brain, and really kind of almost, blinding to the anxiety that she's feeling. But it works with her, and it works for her. And that's why we did it. It's like, all right, if you're telling me that where you feel the most comfortable and where you feel the most confident is when you're coaching, then we need to bring that in here. And it might look different, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
You show me a runner that isn't talking to themselves while they're running and coaching themselves and changing their self-talk that way. We had a person, we had Wanda. We still have Wanda. Wanda's there.
Wanda's not there right now, but she makes appearances.
Yeah.
For those that not watching the video version right now, Wanda as a fourth screen just popped up. No, I'm just kidding. Can you imagine?
We just had that would have been perfect.
That would have been brilliant.
I know, but Irene, I could see this working too, because like many of the people listening to this are not going to be run coaches, right? But I'm just thinking about the mother runners out there, and how many moms that we work with who will like literally do anything for their kids, right? And like my wife is one of them. Will like sacrifice everything for the kids, and like if something happens with kids, it's like they're in like the zone, right? And they take care of things. So I wonder if a mom runner out there was struggling with this. I wonder if them coaching their son or their daughter, right? Like running alongside of them and being like, what would you say to your child if they were struggling to either, get back on the field or get back on the court or finish what they started, right? Or, not be able to perform at regionals or states, or right? Like, I'm just thinking about parents who probably feel in their comfort zone, like being able to provide that pep talk for their kids. And, would they be able to almost do some of this visualization and
absolutely
and talk as well? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
It's what works for you. It's where do you find that confidence, and where do you find that place where you're still doing what you need to be doing, but you're able to divert to something else and help move someone else along, and whoever that, if it's a child, if it's Wanda, if it's, for me, it would probably be, Sydney, because she'll go running with me sometimes. And it's really, I might be like, man, I just want to stop at this point. And she's out there, and it's like, all right, first of all, I have to pull myself together. And second of all, how can I help her through this? And it might be, okay, we're going to get to that tree, and, then we're going to walk to the next tree, and then we're going to run again. And then we're going to, and, especially with kids too, which is good, especially if it's one of those long, slower runs, is with kids, you want to get them to slow down, because kids are out the gate hauling. So it's okay, no, we're going to really slow it down, and we're going to slow it down. And you're talking to your child, but you're talking to yourself, but it feels more purposeful because, as human beings, we tend to put ourselves last. So if we can take care of someone else through it, or coach someone else through it, why not?
Right.
not?
And then it helps kind of decrease that pressure that we put on ourselves and kind of change our focus of like,
Yep.
hey, I need to perform. And if I don't perform, then everyone's going to look at me and be like, oh, you're a failure. Right. Or, why did you even, try to run this half marathon or marathon? So that makes sense. All right. So we are down to the fifth and final tip here. So what is our fifth tip and, how we can better deal with race anxiety?
Relaxation strategies, and again, practicing those and incorporating those into your plan. It could be breathing techniques. It could be visualizations. It could be, refocusing, or, some kind of meditation where you have, just some kind of object of focus that is where you can really just bring, when you're feeling anxious, the stress response is going on in your brain. And we want to start building up and switching it over to the relaxation response, because they can't coexist. They can't coexist. So we want to basically turn off the stress response with relaxation. You could do that with breathing. There's a breathing technique that I like that is, well, there's two. There's belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, which is basically just having your belly move. So instead of breathing high, because when we're anxious, we tend to breathe high, we tend to breathe shallow. So we're literally just making our belly move, and that means we're getting kind of a full breath. And another is having a longer exhale than your inhale. There's all kinds of different breathing things. It's what works for you. So play around with it and have fun. But breathing is so powerful. We're doing it anyway. And if it can make us feel that bad, where we're feeling, either panicked or we can't catch a breath, the converse is also true. We just have to practice it. So look up some breathing exercises, diaphragmatic breathing and, the longer exhale. Visualizations, we can visualize with Wando, we can visualize with our kid, we can visualize, what it's going to look like. And when we visualize, we don't want to visualize if we're running through our plan and we're running through our execution of our plan. We do not want to visualize how it is going to go wrong, because what we do in practice, we do in the game, my friends. So we want to visualize how it is going to go right. So when you're doing a visualization for like a logistical walkthrough, every single thing is going to go according to plan in the visualization, so that it starts to feel more natural, but it also is setting you up to, again, not having to think in the moment of, oh my gosh, what do I do? So you want to visualize it all going right. You have, like, in your planning, if we're, doing race strategy, we have A goal, B goal, C goal. So we're prepared for all of them, but we don't want to visualize C if we're going for A. We want to get down to C if we need to. And the two, it's refocusing and, reframing how we're thinking, like, man, I can't do this. Like, well, I am doing this. If you're out on, your 20 miler and it's 100 stinking degrees and you're, 10 miles from where you parked your car, hello, and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't. I am. Don't think you can. Don't think in ways that are, kind of vague or wishful. You want to think really, really concretely. So, have it be very, action oriented, even in your thoughts. You want that to kind of like with the visualization, you want it to all go right in the visualization. You want it to be like highlighting what exactly is going on in the thoughts. So not I can, not I will, I am. I am 10 miles into this run and I am running. And I am hot and I am miserable, but I am running. And I'm going to get back to my car eventually. So it's yeah.
Get back to the AC.
I know. So yeah, step 5 is relaxation strategies. Incorporate them into your plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Kat, do you have anything to add to that? Did you try any of these at all?
I have 2. One, Irene asked me where I felt when we were talking the most relaxed. And for me, it's under a tree. I like to be under trees and grass. I don't like desert. I like the lush green. So she told me every day, if I was feeling anxious, literally go outside barefoot if I could, stay in the grass under the tree and just calm. And that actually does help me. And that's why I love running on the trail by myself a lot of times when it's rainy, because that nice feeling of rain is alone, and everyone laughs, but I love running in the race and I do my best because I'm happiest. It's a freeing feeling. It's my relaxation, is that rain, that calm. And so it's not really a visualization per se, but it is a breathing where, okay, go outside, look at the trees. And on tough runs, I have sometimes stopped under a tree and be like, okay, breathe, you can do this. And you can always revert back. And as a coach, turning into coach again, but you could always revert back to your timed interval walk runs if you need to. No matter how tired you are, you pretty much know you could always walk back to your car. Always keep that in the back of your head. Pretty much if you're a runner and you've been running, you can always walk back to your car unless you're injured, in which case you might need help. But so why not start experimenting? Run 3 minutes, walk 1 minute, just keep a pace, run 3 minutes. You will be amazed at how far you can get by running 3 minutes, walking one. It may not be what your plan A was, but it will get you to your finish goal. So I've used that on occasion when I've needed to. I've gone back to an interval run walk situation, very time oriented, but so that does work. And just know, like she was saying, you're doing it and you can do it. You just have to keep going. Go back to what, if it has to be a 1-to-1 ratio, run 1 minute, run 1 minute walk. You're still going forward. You're still making progress to your car and the AC, because Irene and I do not like the heat, but you're going.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, we're very vocal about that. But I thought, those were two very visualization things, and incorporating that has helped me is maybe some people like the water, like to be by the beach, that might calm them down.
Ooh, I love
So
the
maybe
beach.
find if you don't suffer from that anxiety, but if you did, maybe find a race where it's near water.
Yeah.
I tend to look for races that have trees. So but it is everything she said, I incorporated. So that's really what I wanted.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And I actually was thinking about you today, Irene, this morning as I was on my run. And just, this really relates to the relaxation strategies. And I myself have been working on some of these breathing techniques that Irene speaks about. I wasn't planning on sharing this today, but you know what? I figure it will be good to give a little context. Myself is really not so much with, I've never, at least historically, have struggled with like race anxiety, but my brain is on hyperdrive a lot of times. I am juggling a lot and have a lot of projects and things going on in my head. And I actually met with Irene and, we worked on some relaxation strategies to really more so calm myself down at night and close the devices and the 10 things on the to-do list that I could be doing, and being able to wind down before bed so I can get better restful sleep and recover from my runs and my strength training. But the breathing strategies that Irene talks about have been super helpful. And I was thinking about you in the fact of it's really helped my running too, Irene, because that's always been my biggest limiting factor is my breathing and my running. Like it's never been my legs. It's just because I think, I've been strength training and, conditioned for 20 plus years now. It's always been the lungs, and I was never like an aerobic athlete before. I was never a cyclist, never swimmer. I'm a sinker, not a swimmer. So, it's always been the breathing. And like this morning on my ease run, I'm like just thinking about like now I'm able to control my heart rate so much better. I'm able to do like diaphragmatic breathing actually the whole time. And like I can even, breathe with my mouth closed and just do like nose breathing. So even just practicing some of those breathing things at night when I kind of close down the computer and, just, try some of the meditation so that you recommended, that's helped, I think, even help me relax during some of those runs. And we'll see, if it helps at a race itself. But yeah, these strategies, guys, relaxation strategies can be super helpful. I can see, those maybe even before a race at the start line, like just trying to go into your zone, whether you close your eyes and just remove everything around you, or even before you get to the start line. Like for Kat, I could definitely see, I love trees as well. And like being under a tree, like I was just actually looking at my red maple yesterday, as I was outside with my daughter playing some volleyball. And it is so relaxing to like look up into the leaves, right? Like I could see that being super helpful for someone who's like getting anxious before they go to the start line, and just to kind of calm themselves down a little bit, especially because we see so many people start out too fast. And I think if you're a runner listening to this and you've traditionally done that, where the first 2 miles of your race are always like the fastest 2 miles, you are definitely starting out too fast. And we've done many episodes on kind of race strategy before. But if you're just like too pumped up for your race and or too anxious for your race, that could be detrimental to your performance. And maybe trying some of these relaxation strategies prior to the race actually starts can be helpful for you. I don't know, Irene, you are the professional. Do you agree with my little
I do.
kind
I
of
do.
synthesis?
Yes, I do. Especially if this is something that you've been doing already. It's part of your plan and you're executing this. So, practicing the breathing before your long runs or before any run, just really getting into the habit of doing that so it becomes second nature. Because what you're going to find, if you haven't found already with breathing, especially diaphragmatic breathing, is that you're training your body to breathe like that anyway. So we want you to tap into it on race day instead of learning it on race day. So practicing it as part of your plan is, okay, I'm gonna do this breathing and this is when I'm gonna do it, and get used to how it feels so that you notice when it's off. So even when you're running and you're like, something doesn't feel right and it's breathing related, refocus it and get it where it needs to go. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, no, that was super helpful. So in summary, if I needed to summarize kind of your 5 tips to really deal with, race anxiety, the first was kind of have that plan, first and foremost, and then you got to practice that plan. So that's kind of tip number 2 is practice the plan, execute the plan. And then 3 is you got to be flexible. So you got to find what works for you. And it might not be what worked for your other running friend. It might not be what you read when you Googled race anxiety or even listened to this podcast, right? We may have not even talked about the strategy that works for you, right? And that's where finding a professional like Irene can be beneficial, right? To really be able to, hone into what you need as a runner. And then 4th tip was having those supports, whether it was your family, friends, running community, your Wanda, as Kat has, right? Your, imagery partner, if you will, or kind of out of body experience, to get you into that kind of happy comfort zone of yours. And then the 5th tip is really relaxation strategies, whether you do those the night before your race, the morning of your race, at the race, maybe during the race, right? You can even probably do some of those during the actual race, to be able to calm yourself down a little bit. And even some of the talk that you had mentioned, Irene, I really liked a lot. Like, I am doing this, right? I love that phrase that you mentioned, or I am running, that you are actually doing it, right? And getting out of some of that negative self-talk that, we can go through. Kat, do you have anything that you would want to add to any of that we haven't mentioned yet?
No. When it's time to go, I know it's sure I do have one, I'll just summarize, but other than that, no, not out of those 5.
Okay. All right. Well, hold off on your summary first.
All right.
And yeah, Irene, I think it would probably do us justice to just mention, um, you know, when do we seek out help from a professional like yourself? And how does somebody find a provider? Is there an easy way that someone can find someone to work with? Yeah. What do you
Yeah.
like to tell folks?
When it starts, when the anxiety of any kind, whether it's race anxiety, whether it's regular anxiety, depression, or whatever you happen to be going through, or even stress, when it feels unmanageable and when it feels like it's interfering in your life. Like Kat was a perfect example of, I knew I needed to talk to someone because it wasn't getting better, and I was literally considering possibly not running. So when you notice that it's starting to or impact what you're doing, the anxiety is so bad you start missing long runs, or you're kind of like, I'm just gonna push it off, or I'm not even gonna register for it because I might feel too anxious to do it. So it's when you notice that it's basically impacting your functioning, in at least one domain. So that's when, that's that kind of quote unquote clinical level where, please, talk to someone. And as for finding someone, a lot of people will go through, they'll call the number, or usually they'll go online for their insurance companies and see, hey, who's in the area. It is in mental health and behavioral health at this point, it is extraordinarily hard to get in right now, just because everyone is so overloaded. So if you know somebody, or someone that worked with someone in particular, ask for like a personal referral, and say, hey, look, so and so sent me, and then a lot of times that can help people be creative, or at least get something in the way. But all that, I don't want to discourage people from reaching out, but if you think, and you're starting to feel that it's impacting you and you're kind of on the fence about it, reach out now, because people are booking out. So please do. And as a clinician, I always have to say, if there is if it's hitting a sense of safety for you, either toward yourself, toward someone else, or it's just it feels like it's hitting every single functioning domain that you have, and you just can't, that's an emergency level. That's when it's like, okay, I need to probably, at least get evaluated at the hospital.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for mentioning that. And yeah, I have heard, that availability is becoming scarce, and especially even like, teenagers. And I hear that it's very difficult to get appointments. So yeah, I would say for those that are looking out there, don't get, I think it's easy for us to be like, well, this is just too hard to do, so I just won't do it. Be persistent, maybe look for other options, right, that are around you, and just stick with it, until you get an appointment, or be proactive. Like Irene mentioned, is, if you're starting to feel some things and it's been going on for a little bit, then chances are it's probably not just going to go away on its own. And you might as well, get the ball rolling and get an appointment on the books. And hey, who knows, in a couple of weeks, couple of months, like if you have to cancel it, you have to cancel it. Right.
Right.
It is better to be a little bit more proactive. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that's very important, for those who are looking for help. I guess with, with you specifically being in Connecticut, if someone was using insurance, do they have to live in the state of Connecticut in order to seek services from you?
It's, the insurance piece is interesting, because it's not so much the insurance, because we verify benefits before, and we'll say, hey, yeah, we take it, or no, we don't. But I actually have plans that are from like New York and stuff like that. The only thing is, for telehealth, is the person that I'm working with at that time has to be in the state of Connecticut. So
right. Okay.
I could be wherever, but
right.
the identified client has to be in the state of Connecticut.
Okay,
But the insurance is interesting. They're almost more nationwide now. So
Yeah.
kind of opens up doors. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if, so let's just say there was someone who was in the state of Connecticut, do you want to share like how it would be best if someone did want to work with you and check your availability? How could they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Really, the easiest way is to text me. I mean, it really is. Say that you checked in, to the live, and I heard your number there. So it is to text me. Emailing is probably second best. Calling is extraordinarily difficult for me because I work such long hours, and then I just don't want to intrude on people's lives at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. So my cell is 860-834-3499.
Okay.
I have it
All
on
right,
speed
perfect.
dial.
And I will drop those in the show notes for those of you who are in Connecticut. But yeah, if you guys need help, then definitely, seek it out, seek out a local provider near you. And yeah, before we close out, Kat, what are your words of wisdom that you have?
No, just really, I think that if you, and I've always been a big advocate of not believing everything on social media, but if you look at just social media in general, and it can be a wonderful thing, but if you suffer from race anxiety, or you suffer like it can actually make things, what's wrong with me? Everybody seems so happy. Everybody is so excited to run this race. Yeah, I'm panicked. I don't want to run this race, So it's not abnormal to have anxiety about running. I know it's not necessarily, and I hate to say this, it's not, it may not be life and death, but it can be life changing. It can be a life changing decision to start running. And I say that in all seriousness. And it can be life changing to complete your first race. And I've seen that firsthand in some people, it's changed their life. But there could be some anxiety. And if it turns into some level, like Irene said, there's no shame in asking for help. And I needed the help from a professional because I couldn't process why this wasn't working right. And, it's not really talked about, I don't think, in like the running community. I'm on a lot of other Facebook pages, a lot of other running pages, and you don't really hear a lot about how to deal with race anxiety. I mean, you hear about fueling, plan, all this stuff, which can alleviate it, but you don't hear about it, how you feel the night before your first race. You're anxious, but what if you're more than anxious? You're panicky. And that's why I felt as a coach, it was actually kind of important to kind of explain to people that this is not abnormal. And if you don't suffer from it, no worries. Enjoy. If you see me on the trail, say hi to Wanda. I don't care. But if you could literally say hi to Wanda. But if you don't, but you're not, but if you do suffer from it, I really want to stress that you're not by yourself. It's not abnormal. And that's why, as a coach, I wanted to come out here and share my personal story so that that, look, this happened, but look, I've been successful since addressing this. That was the worst. And last year I had a very successful running. I did Remacon and I did the 50K. So that was after, having one of the worst races of my life, pure anxiety, talking to Irene. So it's not like, so there is hope after, I want to tell people. And I just want everyone to know that it's it could be normal. It's not something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And I think that is super helpful. And, I think it gives great perspective. And that's why I just love having you on our coaching team and all the goodness that you are doing for all the athletes that you're working with. And I think they would all agree for those that are going to be listening to this. By the way, if you guys do want to, get some clarity on your kind of running, your strength plan, your run plan, get it structured out for you so you can get consistent support and want to work with Coach Kat or any of the coaches on our team, certainly reach out. I'll have the link in the description below, and you can check our availability and, to be able to get some clarity on that. And as you can see, we're real coaches that share our real struggles as well. And, we would love to help you get over your hurdles. And, hopefully you guys found this episode helpful. And I do think that it was important to talk about, like you had mentioned, Kat, and hopefully, this will help others. So if you're listening to this, wherever you're listening, whether you're listening on our Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel, our Facebook group, on the podcast, like copy the link, share it with a running friend, who may be struggling with this, so they can know that they're not alone. And hopefully, the 5 strategies that Irene shared can help them be able to, start to work on overcoming some of these obstacles. So, thanks, Coach Kat. As always, we love having you as a regular on the show. Thanks for coming on. And Irene, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you were very busy helping people out all day. So I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your expertise in, managing anxiety. And I think it's great that you can, relate it to running because you are a runner yourself.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And guys, as always, let's always stay active. Let's stay healthy, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.
Bye.